Hello, we are live, and I have a great panel to discuss Longlegs today. This will be a spoiler discussion, and I will keep making that clear throughout, just if you tune in a little bit later. If you haven't seen it, you might not want to watch, but then you might want to rewatch this, the replay of this after you see the movie, because there's a lot to talk about. I'm going to bring my friends to the channel, and we do have movie files potentially coming on later. But to the stage, we have KB Loves Movies.
How's it going, Trey?
How's it going? Thanks for joining me today. We will also bring Caprice.
Hello, my darlings.
Hello. So I think I first want to bring up, I think it's pretty incredible how well this movie is doing at the box office on such a tiny budget and tiny marketing budget. So that's amazing. I think the marketing was really fantastic for this. They did just all like viral stuff, which was great. So I want to get your initial thoughts, your overall opinions of the movie before we get into the nitty gritty.
Well, for me, I was excited to see it. I think the success of this movie so far really deals more with the buzz than actual marketing dollars. I mean, you mentioned they did a couple things. The phone number, people were talking about that, of course, posters, trailers, all that good stuff. But I really think it was the anticipation that people built up. And these days, to get people into the cinema, I think it's going to be us talking about it more than anything a studio can do. And also the mystery behind it. You didn't know what Nicolas Cage's character looked like unless you went to the movie. Even, checking a lot of sites today, there's still not images of what he looks like a weekend after it came out. It sounds weird me saying that, but these days, a weekend is like in dog years. So it's really interesting that even now people have little to no idea what he looks like in the movie. So there's intrigue also. And that helps people get into the theaters, into the seats. There's nothing saying, hey, the streaming date is this, or the physical media releases on this date, like you see with a lot of popular big studio movies. I went to see Maxine on Thursday, I want to say, and I had the physical media date and streaming date 2 days before. So it's really sad that 3 days before a movie premieres, there's already alternative ways to watch it that keeps people out of the theater and in homes, which is not great for the box office. So the mystery, the intrigue, the marketing, and of course, just the word of mouth really helped this lead to success. And I think it worked.
Before we get into this real quick, Caprice, I have to. I'm so glad you brought that up. Do you know what the date was for Maxine? Because the box office for Maxine is really, really low.
Mm-hmm. I don't remember it offhand, but I mean, we could look it up really quickly.
But it was like sooner than later, probably.
Yeah,
Okay.
and
Yeah.
you see that with other movies too. Quiet Place is going to be on premium video on demand by the end of July. So it's like they're not giving them a chance to succeed in the box office. Every 1 in 5 to 10 movies are getting 100-day theatrical releases. Everything else is like 17 days or maybe a little bit more. But we were talking about Bike Riders not too long ago, you and I, and that's already on VOD. So they really don't have a chance in cinema these days. So it's sad.
Well, I'm glad. I don't think they've put out a streaming date for Longlegs yet, so hopefully they keep that quiet.
Yeah,
Caprice, how did you feel about the film and everything going on with it?
So this was actually one of my most anticipated movies of this year. Marketing alone is what pulled me in, just kind of like everybody else, I feel. I haven't seen marketing like this, honestly, since the Blair Witch Project. You're throwing out a website. You're giving out little hints here and there. You're not giving everything away. I have no idea what I'm going to go see, but I'm going to go see it because I want to find out. And so, like, when you had posted about the phone number, I had called that like a couple days prior. And just hearing that alone made me more hyped. So every time a trailer or a website or a phone number got dropped, everybody ran to go see if you were going to get some kind of spoiler, and you really didn't. Like KB said, you're not even seeing what Nicolas Cage looked like now, and it's already been the weekend. I saw this on Wednesday and on Saturday. I'm really surprised that a lot of people are respecting that surprise factor and not spoiling that, really, because the huge appeal to this from everybody that I've talked to so far is, what does Nicolas Cage look like, and why is he like that? So people are really going to see, one, the allure of this movie, to see what the hell is going on. Two, the performances, sure, but I don't care what anyone says. Everybody's going to go see Nicolas Cage, and that's what they've built this around. I'm really happy that they marketed it this way. I'm glad there's no VOD set for it. I'm glad that they're not giving anything away, because it's making you go to the theater to see it. And I feel like that's where it should be. I don't think you're going to get the same atmosphere. You're not going to get the same feeling at home. This movie needs to be seen in the theater. And I love that they're pretty much making you do that. But again, this was my most anticipated. I've seen it twice already. I haven't talked to anybody about it yet. I saved it just for this, so I have a lot to say. And thank you for asking me to come, Tracy. I know we've been trying to do something for so long, and I'm really, really glad that it's this. So I'm ready. I don't know about you guys.
No, yeah, I'm excited as well. And on that note, I'm going to bring in our next panelist, Movie Files. Let's bring him to the stage. Thank you so much for joining.
Hey, how we doing, everyone?
Hello.
What's
It was
up?
almost perfect timing for you to join, because everyone's kind of just giving their initial thoughts about the film in a general way, as well as kind of
Mhm.
like the hype and all of this, the behind the scenes stuff that got people to go to the theater this weekend.
Yeah. I mean, to piggyback off that, I'm so glad that the box office numbers came out today, and it's what the highest grossing neon film, surpass Immaculate, and it just goes to show, when you make a good movie, you got a passion behind it, and I'm sure, as we'll talk about, the marketing for this film is some of the best I've seen in like a very long time, and considering that they didn't even like have the television network marketing. It was all digital marketing, like through X and Twitter and Instagram. Like, it just goes to show word of mouth and old school, smart, creative marketing team can help you get people to go see a movie that's really worth checking out. So the hype was real for me. I was very excited for it. I normally like to stay away from trailers, especially for like indie films. I like to discover films, but it was just so damn good. It was so enticing. And it wasn't even like necessarily like trailers per se. I was looking at some of the weird images and all the stuff they were putting out, the symbols, calling the number, like that stuff is just like, it's a great way to market a film. And I hope Hollywood takes note of like, oh, we need to make another Longlegs. Like, no, show, market, take the notes of how to market a film, and obviously have great creatives to make a good movie at the same time. So yeah, excited to talk about it with you all.
Yeah, and I think they said that they only spent $10 million or less on the marketing. I know the
Yeah.
film itself had a budget of like 6 to 10 million,
Mhm,
but I
mhm.
think the marketing itself was only under, it was like 10 or under. And like you see,
Yeah.
sometimes we'll hear like, oh, a movie has kind of a lower budget, but they still spend, 50 to 100 million on marketing. That's kind of like
Mhm.
without saying, and that doesn't necessarily bring people to the theater. So I think it says a lot about the creative team behind their marketing campaign, as you were speaking of. I'm going to quickly just bounce into the chat just to say hi to people, and then we will get into, this is going to be a spoiler conversation. So I told people if they haven't seen it yet, they might not want to watch and then watch this later on. Mindless Meat, how's it going? Thanks so much for showing up and saying hi. View with Drew, hello. Maxfield, what good, cool people. Absolutely. Slip de Garçon. I keep hearing the name of this movie. That's the extent of my knowledge at the moment. I think that's probably some people.
Yeah.
I don't blame them. I think because of it's a word of mouth driven film for sure. I didn't see Longlegs yet. Hello, Laren. So I can't stick around, but I heart you all. That's smart
the
because I think
11.
you'll want to see it at some point, and I don't want you to be have anything spoiled. And then we have Wilkie's Movies and Music. Hey, all. Thank you so much for joining us today. And I would agree with this so far, too early to call Longlegs Horror Film of the Year. According to like me, and I know all of us enjoyed the movie, but I know there's a lot of people that are hating on it. But I don't know. Maybe it's just not what people thought it was going to be, and they thought it was going to be a little bit more gruesome and like, I mean, you know what I'm saying, guys? Do you think that there is a preconceived notion about this movie that maybe other people are kind of feeling let down?
I think so, and I think another movie that's getting that is Maxine. I think people are going in expecting it to be more like X or maybe like Pearl, and they're getting something different. Knowing anything about Ty West, he's trying to make each movie different. In this case, I think they're expecting like a gore fest or, something that's going to be fast paced, and you go in and not, of course, to give anything away, but it's more of a slow pace and some people would say a slow burn in a sense. But the thing I don't like about certain movies that are a slow burn, it's like they draw it out for character development or to give you a backstory or whatever. And I think the pacing and the development of the story is done in an excellent manner here. And that kind of deserves the slow burn. If they were to reveal too much up front, I think it would have spoiled the movie in a lot of ways. So I think we needed that slow burn to build things up and to reveal things as you went along. And I just remember we are doing spoilers, so I could have said that. But anyway,
yeah, that's okay.
yeah, I think it's better that way. I'm so used to doing like spoiler-free reviews and stuff like that. So I think just by having that development happen over time throughout the movie, you could have guessed the ending or, the reveal of who was behind it and everything. But I think by doing it that way, you can't go into like certain movies with expectations these days because, the M. Night Shyamalan rule, everybody's going to have a twist on top of a twist on top of a twist, even his daughter. So I think you just need to just go in just with no expectations and just enjoy the ride.
Yeah. Oh, go ahead.
I can see it, but at the same time, I don't understand it too much because we were literally giving nothing into what to expect in this movie. So when I hear somebody say, oh, it wasn't bloody enough, there wasn't enough this or that, I'm kind of thrown off and taken aback by it because I'm like, where did you get the idea that it was supposed to be that? You weren't given anything. None of us were given anything. We got a few snippets here and there. You saw a little bit of blood in the trailers that we did get. You didn't see blood poured everywhere. You weren't seeing people you saw somebody getting stabbed randomly. Come to find out later on what that really was. But there was no blood involved in that. So when I'm told the gripes of, oh, it wasn't bloody enough and I was expecting this, well, you were expecting what you built up in here from what you saw. That's not what we were given. And to go in to expect that, I feel it's kind of unfair because that visual wasn't given to you from the get. So again, it really all came down to the marketing for it. And it really built up certain things for horror fans and for everybody else. And I see it, I understand it, I get it. But at the same time, it's kind of not fair to criticize it off of something that you built up on your own.
Yeah, I'll play devil's advocate. I'm totally with you guys as far as the perception of it all. But I guess sometimes when looking at marketing, it's not for us, the horror fans, movie fans, critics, whatnot. It's for the general audience. And like looking at the most recent cinema score was like a C+. I think in the modern movie making era we live in, Blumhouse, and even I love A24, but they're even guilty of this. Like there's a lot of their movies that they mismarket, in my opinion. Like It Comes at Night, and some of their movies they really pitch it as like a Blumhouse slasher thing, but it's like much more than that. And I think, again, for the general audience, they have this expectation of like, oh, I want to go see a bloody slasher. Jason, Freddy, you know, type of thing. And everyone was comparing it to like Silence of the Lamb and Seven and Zodiac. So I think sometimes marketing can hit the general audience and build that expectation just because of what they're anticipating from, again, movie making of, again, Blumhouse, the Night Swims of the world, the Imaginary of the world. And that's what they're kind of going to, because I mean, this is a much larger conversation as far as like box office and like how less and less people are going to the theater, and they're going to the theaters for like event films or things that get them out of the house versus something they can watch at home or streaming. So again, playing devil's advocate, it's just that we're just in such a different time now with movies and how they're presented and how people build things in their head. Like if I want to go out, it better be scary, blood, this, that, and the other, and the word of mouth is there. So I think again, it kind of, it's just a weird time we live in that, again, built expectations can sometimes ruin the experience of people think it's this thing. And like you were just saying, as far as what you got, can't judge it what you thought it was going to be. You can only judge it for what it actually is. But there's a huge discrepancy, again, from general audience and people that can accept a film for what it actually is. So, yeah.
Yeah, those are all really great points. And I think that perhaps, when people hear scariest film of the year, which was, you know, put out there a lot, I think, you know, being scared and feeling scared is so subjective. And I feel like, you know, maybe I would say it's the most evil movie of the year, because I feel like everyone got cursed when they saw it in the theater with me. But I think Oz Perkins, I think he did create, he didn't like, I think there was like very little press concerning of like, they wanted to keep it a secret what the whole film was for a very long time. And I loved that you didn't really see Nicolas Cage. I love that you didn't really know what it was about, just like you guys were saying. Oz Perkins, by the way, is my favorite character in Legally Blonde. So I love him in that. Yeah, it's just a great scene. But regardless, to stay on track. So when we talk about what actually happened in the movie, there's a lot of that, you know, mystical surrealism that is incorporated into this towards the end. And we find out what's actually going on. I wanted to bring up something to you because no one's kind of figured out why, but there is an actress credited as the adult version of Ruby, the girl at the end when Blair, oh my God, I'm like blanking out on his last name. The cop, he's phenomenal in this.
Blair
Underwood.
Yes, Underwood. Yes, thank you. And his daughter, they have an actress like listed as the adult version, and it's actually also in the credits. What do you guys think about that?
Scene that was cut.
Yeah. Most likely,
if somebody's in SAG, they're gonna get their flowers, they're gonna get their bag, so they're gonna get their credit at the end of the movie.
I wonder if that lends itself to a sequel. I don't necessarily feel like this movie needs one. But if they wanted to continue with that actress, I could see that happening. But it's not something that I think that I'm wanting, I guess.
Yeah.
So when we talk about, you know, I think that the biggest shocking moment of the movie to really, you know, to get such a response out of the audience is the interrogation scene. What did you guys think about the interrogation scene, how it was executed? And just it's kind of, you don't really learn much at all, but you do have an interaction with her, seeing him face to face for the first time. What did you guys think about that?
Well, going back to the marketing, a couple of days before the movie came out, they released like a thing of Michael Monroe going into the room. That was her first time seeing Nicolas Cage like on set. Like the director purposely made sure they didn't see each other so he can capture that sense of creepiness, and it played perfectly into the scene. So the hype was there for me. I was waiting for that scene, and it did not disappoint. And I would, I don't know if you were saying it didn't give too much. I thought it was the complete opposite. It told us a lot of stuff. Like he was the man in the basement, and obviously he's been kind of following her career this whole time and all this stuff. So he was hinting at, he was very aware of her. But no, it's really excited to hear you all's thoughts about it. But I thought it was one of the best scenes of the entire film. The tension was there, the creepiness was there, and then going back to our conversation about bloody and gory, that was one of the most goriest scenes in the entire film, of him breaking his nose and jaw, and that was awesome. As a horror fan, that was great. That was one of my favorite standout moments for sure.
I agree with that completely. That was also one of my favorite scenes, minus the first 6 minutes of the movie. The intro of the little girl coming out, and then all of a sudden he's there. Now, I never fully react in a movie. Like, I'm not one of those people screaming or yelling or anything like that. I'm taking everything in. This was the first time in a long time where the shot came up and I yelled out loud. It just caught me so off guard. I wasn't expecting it. And even then, you didn't fully see him either. You only saw from here down. And when I forgot what he says something and he says, well, what if I just, and he goes in and I yelled out loud. And so I was so excited for that. So when I finally did see him, I was stuck. I was like, I had been waiting for this for a whole year. I was just, like, there was me and 3 other people sitting on either side of me. All of us kind of sat up in our seats and got really close. Like we couldn't get close enough to it. We wanted to take in every wrinkle, every crevice. We just wanted to take in all that was Nicolas Cage in that moment. And to piggyback off of what Movie File said, when he started doing what he did and things were falling off, and things are coming out, and just the way how he said, hail Satan before he did it, I've never had goosebumps like that, where I just kind of sat back. When I saw him, I sat forward. When he started doing that, I sat back, and I was like, wow, okay, so this is where we're going with this. But that moment, just seeing him and then having it be it, I was like, I had waited all that time, and my biggest gripe with it was it wasn't enough time.
That's a great point. Yeah,
time. And I felt like he came and went, and he went in such a dramatic way, that was crazy to me. It's still crazy to me. Like, even talking about it now, I'm just like, I feel like I'm still kind of processing it as to, like, I have so many questions.
I mean, to your point, it's a bold move. I mean, to not have him in the film as much or as limited time as he had, and he is the title character of the film. Like, I can't think of another film that kills off the title character at that point in the film, and we don't even see him for the last 45 minutes.
I can think of 2. So
don't take mine.
I'm talking first. I bring it back to 7, and I bring it back to Silence of the Lambs.
Okay.
We don't see Hannibal Lecter that much. We don't see Buffalo Bill that much. If you really go and look at it screen time wise, they're both on the screen, maybe a total 15 minutes tops, 10 minutes tops, but you're fully aware of them. Like, by the time you see them and the little time that you interact with them, you feel like you've been watching them the whole movie. Like, that they've been the ones on the screen because they're talked about so much. The same with John Doe in 7. You only see him the last 15, 20 minutes of the movie, but he's implied the entire time. I feel like they took it out of the textbook for this one, and that's why you don't see Longlegs as much as you want to. But you want to. I want to know everything about this guy. And I got so little from it, but it made such an impact, just like John Doe, just like Hannibal, just like Buffalo Bill. So I see that, but it's just like, it made you want him so much more. Just that one scene you waited for this whole time. This is all anybody wanted. They wanted to see Nicolas Cage and what he was going to do. And then it was just over.
Yeah.
He was gone.
To go back to your question about, like, having someone of, like, star power and then be on the screen just so short, I'm going to tie it back to the director, Oz Perkins, his father, Anthony Perkins. Psycho. Janet Leigh was the only star at the time when that movie came out, 1960, and killing her off, 25 minutes into the movie, shocked audiences, because now the movie is not about the star anymore. It's about this other guy and his mother in the house. So it's almost like an ode to the past. And of course, after seeing this, I had to go back and read interviews with him and everything. And because of the mother-daughter relationship in this movie, he said it's his most personal movie because it's like the secret that his father kept all those years
Hmm.
about his identity and everything, and that his mother helped him keep. So I think that's where the tie-in happens. But yeah, it's just amazing that you wait all that time for the reveal, and there was actually a brief reveal before that because I hate jump scares. It's the one thing I hate about modern horror movies. It's like when you have to rely on that, yeah, I'm out. There's no reason for me to watch a movie. And when the trailers were coming out, the hype was starting. I was like, huh, a movie that doesn't rely on jump scares. And then I went back, and after I comment that and saw the movie, I was like, okay, I can't say that because there was a moment before, which is where, um, what was her name? Harker, where Harker actually remembers that childhood memory, and you see a flash of his face, and you could consider that a jump scare. All I know is I didn't react. I froze. That whole fight, flight, freeze. I froze, and I was like, it was like chills all over me. So like anyone who was asking me, "Oh, you saw the movie? What do you think?" I didn't say it was scary. I didn't say this. I just said it was creepy as all get out. I was like, it was creepy AF. That's all I kept saying to people when they wanted to know details, but don't tell me about the movie. I was like, it's creepy.
Yeah.
And that's all I could say about it because that moment creeped me out.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's you don't want to give too much away when you're recommending people see this, and you also want them to kind of understand that it is this like consistent eerie tone throughout the entire movie that is really well executed. You kind of brought up the mom, and I want to kind of dive into that about you know Lee. It does not have a father as far as we've seen. Um, and I feel like that's a really interesting difference between her and all of the other girls that were murdered because obviously the dad is the one that does the deed for the devil that wants the dolls put in the house. What is there any significance there of like she's the one without a father and his name is Longlegs? I know that the director says there's no tie-in with the name of Longlegs or like Daddy Longlegs or anything like that. I kind of think that's BS just in case he wants to do a sequel and reveal why his name is Longlegs later on. Neither here nor there. So the significance between her being the one without a father, as well as kind of like diving into the mom a bit, like she's clearly a hoarder. We believe her on the phone the majority of the time because she just sounds like a regular mom on the phone anytime they're having phone call interactions. And then when Harker visits her in the house, it is like a completely different version of what we thought her mom would be like.
Yeah, well, shout out to Alice Witt. She's I'm always been a fan of hers. I mean, she what was it? Urban Legend or something, I think
Yeah.
was one of her big debuts or what have you. And she's been in a couple of other projects. But yeah, this was a role that is very difficult to play, especially going back to what KB was saying. If someone asks you like, this, that, and the other, how was this performance? Like she's one of the most hardest characters to describe in the film because of how different. First off, I'm such a person of like having the bad habit of whenever one character is talking to another character that person probably doesn't exist. So I thought the reveal was going to be her mom died at some point and she's just been like so scared to address that trauma, what have you. But I'm glad she was alive because obviously she was pivotal into the ending. But yeah, I thought the mom and go back to your question about the whole father thing. Yeah, that's a very, I would love to hear the commentary on that particular reason why she didn't have a dad and how it can play into ultimately him deciding to not let them deciding to not slaughter them like the other families did. So it's a very, very interesting concept there. And it maybe has some religious ties, again, going back to the book of Revelation and immaculate conception. There's so many things you can go into, especially now with the whole religious angle being kind of tied into this narrative. So very, very interesting. But again, I just thought that the performance from the mother was really, really well done. And it just adds into, going back to KB, the creepiness and the awkwardness and the unsettledness of the whole situation of when you get that reveal was just, you can hear a pin drop in the theater. So great role from her.
Definitely. I remember watching the mother and all that discomfort and just awkwardness and just the dialogue between Harker and her mother on the phone. You could already feel just how disconnected it really was. You don't know why, you don't understand why they're kind of talking to each other the way they are in that moment. It's very A and B conversation. It's like as little as you can possibly say just to get the conversation going and to end it as fast as possible. Like it really just felt like neither one of them wanted to talk to each other, and I just felt that. I kind of got secondhand embarrassment by watching them talk on the phone because I don't have that kind of relationship with my mother. And so to literally just hear the long pauses of silence between words during the conversation, to me just made me feel very, I can't even describe how it felt. It just felt very strange. And then to see them interact for the first time, they actually hugged, and it was the most awkward hug I've ever seen. um, and but as soon as Harker started questioning her mother about her birthday, how she went from a kind of awkward smile to nothing and saying, I don't know, I don't remember, just completely shutting off. It was so well done. And just to see Harker's reaction to that, where she was like, I don't believe you. Like, I don't believe you. You're obviously hiding something. But to have the mother just stone faced, just like her whole expression changed, it was beautifully done. But just the disconnect between them, you really, really felt that like on screen. And then by the time the ending is happening, and we'll probably get into that later, you see why she was so disconnected, and you kind of get it. You get an explanation for something finally in this movie. I feel like this relationship was the only thing we really got a full explanation on as to why it happened the way it happened. And that was one of the things I enjoyed more out of the movie, was just these two odd interaction, but there was a reason why it was odd, but you didn't find out about it until later. So it was one of those things that they left open for you to think about the entire time.
For me, it was the moment when she's visiting the mother the first time, and just like on the phone, the mother asks her if she's still praying, and she reveals that, yeah, I'm not doing that. I really never have. And then once again, as Caprice mentioned, there was this switch in the mother. And when she switches, I mean, I swear they pumped up the AC in the theater or something, because all of a sudden I just felt cold. And it was just, once again, going back to Whit's performance, it was just like a switch happened. And she's like, yeah, it don't really do anything. It's all BS. And it's like, whoa, you just went from saying, hey, I should do this religious thing for some sort of protection, to saying, yeah, you don't need that. And it's such a pendulum swing that, at that point you might start to question, like, what is up with this lady? And once again, just a great performance from her. And it's going to be something that, upon rewatch, Caprice, you're lucky to get in that second viewing, because I'm sure it hits different when you get to that scene now, because now that you know how it ends up, you're like, wow. At that point, are you just like saying, this is really what it is? It's not, this is my true belief that I'm trying to show you here, and not what I've been telling you all these years since you're, 8, 9 years old, whatever the case may be. And the fact that, just going back to the birthday, that they never really brought that up until it became like a part of the case. And at that point, I don't know about protocol or whatever, but I would have to think she would have been off the case immediately, because
so personal.
There's too much of a coincidence here.
Well,
And you came on the case, and all of a sudden it's like, hot like fish grease, all of a sudden, no, something's up.
Yeah, I think something also with the mom too is like that she mentions so many times that she was a nurse, and I don't know if that's just her guilt coming out like, well, I used to be a really good person, you know, and
Yeah,
like
yeah.
Hmm.
and like trying to find some common ground with her daughter, and I do think like the praying thing makes me feel like she genuinely thinks that Harker needs to be doing that because of the situation that's going on. Because I don't think that she gave up on like her religious views. I think now that she is working for the devil, though, she's probably even more convinced that there's both good and evil, and has clearly has no issue doing the evil work, which I feel like she's been manipulated. Obviously, I think Longlegs is one of his biggest strengths is a genius manipulator when it comes to all of the crimes and getting away with everything for so long. Like the fact that it's kind of like a smaller town, but like he has no issue just walking in broad daylight into like that store, the hardware store to pick up some things. Like people must know they've seen this guy because he's not like, I mean, he's one of the weirdest looking people you could ever, you know, he's not forgettable. So it's interesting that he has just like hasn't really been in hiding per se. Although we don't get an extensive backstory on, you know, was Lee Harker's character the first girl that he tried to do this with? Was this going on prior? I'd love to get your kind of your outlook on the little bit of the history with him and the church, and when, you know, that was a major scene when they find that doll in the barn, and how that's all connected. And I'm sure once you see, I'd love to see it a second time to really, because now I can ask those questions in a much more specific way to myself.
Yeah.
But just for speculatory reasons, or, you know, I know Caprice, you saw it twice, so that'll be useful in this conversation as well, kind of like what that back history was with Longlegs and the church and that girl.
Well, to piggyback off of what you just mentioned about just slightly going back to the mother, going back to that conversation they had on the phone, I love when she says, you can tell me these things because, again, I used to be a nurse and I've seen some bad things too, which has a double entendre. Literally, she's been murdering people and seen the most bloodiest things in person. So that is a nice little, again, going back to just rewatching and just taking all the subtext in. But yeah, just the long legs of it all. I mean, just kind of weave in some of my criticisms that I have with the film. And I'm a viewer where I don't need to be spoon fed every single little detail, but there are little nuances, little one or two lines that could have been injected in there to go to your point as far as just like a little bit more of that backstory, the religious angle. How did he fall into a cult? How did he fall into the devil? Like there's and hey, that's a prequel idea maybe, or that source if they ever, which I doubt they'll do that, but it's just like those are the little things that kept it, like would make certain films for me just like completely flawed. No film's perfect, but from a narrative perspective, it's like those little things that just could have added more text, more subtext to the certain things of Longlegs. I love, again, mystery of a character. Like I'm a big DC fan. I love the mystery of the Joker, but we have a Joker film that goes through his origins, and I still like that film. But it's just like sometimes you don't need everything, but there are moments where you're just like, just one line of dialogue that could have just added so much more depth to a character. And I wish we would have gotten that with Longlegs. And hey, Oz, if you want to make a prequel, I would watch it, or a little novelization or something, like a backstory would be pretty cool.
I think they gave us a few hints. I mean, if you look at the music and kind of like the whole scene, the mise-en-scene of it, like it's something that ties into like early 70s, that rock music. We get the quote in the beginning of the movie that ties into that too. So it was something to do with that time period and that music and the scene around it that makes you think, you know, if you had to guesstimate and make your own theories about it, that something happened to him during that time. He fell in with like the wrong crowd, a cult maybe, and that led to what took place from maybe late 60s moving forward into the 90s. And you have to imagine his face is almost like a doll itself, but you can't think of anything more trusting to little girls especially than a doll. So you have this tie-in with someone who's a doll maker. I don't know. It's almost like a Trojan horse of sorts that is introduced into the home, and then what takes place takes place. You have the whole thing with someone bringing it as a nun. I mean, once again, that whole dichotomy of religion right there.
Yeah.
So I think it's something to do with it. Just to go back to your question about the when or the backstory, it has to do something with that.
Yeah.
But it
I
would be fun
completely
to
agree with
watch.
both of you. Completely agree with both of you. You on the top, you on my side. I completely agree with every single thing that both of you said. So I'm gonna combine it into two. Hopefully I can give some clarity. So the first time I saw this movie, it was for pure enjoyment. Second time was strictly analyticals. I was looking at everything around. Wasn't really paying attention to the main characters at all. I was looking at the atmosphere. I was looking at everything behind her. I was looking at everything behind him. I was looking at everything else as a whole except for them. The first time taking that in, I agreed with you, Movie Files, completely. I don't need a full backstory. Some of my favorite movies, Seven, Silence of the Lambs, I don't get that full backstory, but I get enough to make it a whole, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I can figure that out on my own. Okay, like that's part of the whim and everything, right? I don't feel like I got enough here for him. There are little shots and little things said about, how he was a member of the church and how he was a doll maker. And just his look alone, I do agree. He looks this is a spoiler thing anyway, so I'm just going to say it. He looks like the man who wants to look like Ken doll. I don't know if you guys have seen that man. Everybody can go Google him if you want to. He's known as the human Ken doll. That is the look of him that I got. So I agree. He looks very doll-like. But I wanted more story as to why he looked like that, because he does not look like a normal man. He doesn't. He doesn't look like a normal person. There was a lot of prosthetic there. He just did not look like a normal person would. He was a member of the church. Okay, cool. What made him turn into Satanism? You just don't go from being a full-blown member of the church, doing all these good deeds, making children dolls, to all of a sudden being a full-blown Satanist, breaking into people's homes and doing whatever it is that you're doing. That you don't have that. There's a very up and low on that whole thing. You don't understand the why. Yeah. I would love to know the why. I would love to know what that breaking point for him was. I feel like it would make this character, I don't want to say relatable because it's not really a relation, but it makes you understand why he's doing what he's doing. As far as that, it's like trying to analyze Charles Manson. You really can't.
Yeah.
You can't analyze him. He's so out there. He was so out there. And he was never accountable. It was always everybody else. The Beatles told me to do it. The dogs told me to do it.
The family did the crimes.
He did this. In this instance, while he's talking to Harker inside the thing, he kept saying she. So he was fully putting it on the mother. Ask her. She knows this. Ask her.
A friend of a friend.
Yeah. And then finally, when it gets to the point to where he would naturally have to give an answer, the man would rather bash his face in than give the answer.
Yeah.
Because then that holds him accountable and that makes him be the person that has to say, yes, I'm the one who initiated all this. There's also the scene where you actually see him interacting with the mother and young Harker. And there's a shot. It's about a 30-second shot where you see him in the house. The mother is bound up on the ground. So you can assume that he forced himself into the home and did God knows what.
Right.
Yeah.
And this woman later on, way later on in life, she's still showing signs of a person who has possible Munchausen's. She sympathizes with him. She would do anything for him to keep her daughter, to keep the angel alive. So when they're down in the basement, he looks at the little girl, young Harker, and he's telling her, you can't be afraid of the dark because you are the dark. So it was really him the whole time. But when it came to him being questioned and held accountable, he wanted to throw it onto the mother, which was exactly what Charles Manson did when he got pulled in. So this character is just an array of just different people influence. What KB said is right on the money. That, you know, that time period, hippies, and like I can just go on to I can just say from California, we had Charles Manson, we had the Night Stalker, we had all these people, and they were always blaming other things, and a lot of it had to do with music. And I got that the second time around, that connect. But again, like Movie Final said, to have that connect fully, I wish I had more of the backstory to make it more, to understand it more. A lot of
Caprice, I have
people
a question for you. I have a question. On the second watch, did you pick up anything as far as Harker having any kind of psychic ability? Because there was that scene where her and the other agent goes out and she like picks out the house, like literally, and
So
they kind of left it alone after that.
Yeah, that was one of the things that annoyed me a little bit, to be honest, because it was literally mentioned once in the car. I guess after her partner gets killed, right? She goes on a little hiatus thing and then comes back, and then that's when you see her in the car for the second, you know, with the other two agents. And the sergeant, he literally says, it's nice to have a sidekick on something like this. Maybe we'll get something different. And that's it. That's all that's ever said about it. It's not revisited later. You get, you know, little shots here and there when she touches certain items. But my whole thing is, if she is a psychic, why is her whole childhood wiped out? Why does she not know? Like, how do you not know certain things? How do you not remember certain things? And, you know, I understand sometimes when something is so traumatic, you black it out. But from my understanding, a psychic can't really do that, because when they see certain things, touch certain things, it brings flashes like it did in the movie. She had flashes when she touched certain things, and when later on it's brought up, you get a sequence of instances where she's starting to remember and bring it back. But that was one of the things that I wished was also touched on a little bit more. When did you find out that you were a psychic? When did you come to the idea, oh my God, I see things that other people don't see? And then in the beginning, she picks out the house and she's like, it's that house. And the guy is like, well, how do you know? It's only literally said one time and it's not revisited again. Literally on the second watch, I was waiting. I was like, maybe I didn't hear it. Maybe I was just so into the movie. You know, maybe they say it again, but it's not. It's only brought up the one time, and it's not revisited again. And
the
so
only thing I could think of is grooming. You know, because you have to imagine from the age of 9 up, there was like little scenes where the mother is telling her what seems to be like a story or a fairy tale or whatever. It's not to say hypnotism, but I'll just say grooming.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of people, it's not a matter of trauma that makes you forget, but there's grooming that leads to, if you had to give her character like traits or anything, she is emotionless. You have the scene with Ruby in the bedroom, like basically interacting with her, and she's just like dead to the world. Yeah. And that's the only thing I could come up with, is that it's not that she forgot, it's like it was like groomed out of her. And if you have to imagine, if the mother was kind of assigned at that point, that's a lot of training. That's a lot of grooming between then and being in what you would say Michael Monroe's late 20s. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a lot of grooming.
I mean, to you guys' point, I think as far as that and another negative going back to just time travel and supernatural elements that are thrown into stories that are so grounded for majority of the film. That was one of my biggest issues. Is yes, they hinted at there was a supernatural entity potentially involved, and we saw the shadow of Satan throughout the film, what have you. But then when they lean so heavily into, yeah, this is like, no, there's no groundedness in this. Satan's involved. There's, saints, all that stuff. That's, to me, is like, well, now you just open up a whole can of worms, because now your world that you established, now you have rules to the world, and now that rules are kind of thrown out because, oh, it's Satan. You can just blame it on Satan and blame it on evil magic, what have you, which kind of makes me go back to the least of it all, Lee memory of it all. I took it as not that's like a hypnosis, but like kind of under a trance for most of her life. Once that her doll always had that in there, and like it almost removed any sense of like normalcy for her. So like you were mentioning, when she was talking to the little girl, or just normal interactions were just so off-putting to her because she's in a trance of a sense. So that was my explanation of why she was acting the way she did, or forgot certain things. And again, I'm just assuming that because there's magic and black magic involved. So that was my kind of written in reasoning. But again, it goes back to sometimes when films don't, again, you don't have to give me the whole 9 yards and all that. But it's just like, that's where like when you throw in something so foreign to just normal situations, it's like, now you got to explain certain things. But yeah,
like it's thrown out, but it doesn't connect to anything.
Yeah.
And it's like you want that connect so bad. Even if I have to try to figure out that connection later and put the pieces together myself, at least bridge it. Like at least like let it touch. But I feel like it has so many branches going out like in one way that just were never connected to anything, that it's like I want to interpret it the right way, but I really can't, because it can go in so many different directions.
Exactly.
I just assumed that the devil in her, because of the doll, was what gave her the psychic powers. And
she's like so sensitive to evil, maybe, and she can detect that.
And because none of the other girls, except for the girl in the insane asylum, are actually alive, we can't really test that theory. But I always, because as soon as the mom shoots the doll in the head, she kind of has that like reawakening moment. And I think so it was the repression of everything that she saw, as well as those psychic abilities. But you're right, they do kind of dissipate mentioning that or having it be useful later on in the movie. I did want to bring up this comment because it's a very interesting comment to think about. Meg Becker says, I can't help but think he was a father who accepted the same deal Harker's mother accepted, and eventually that has to be passed on.
So like maybe he was like Harker's mom, a single dad, and he had to.
Who knows?
I guess does he have a daughter or son that's out there that can carry on the tradition? I mean, it just opens up possibilities. But
like maybe he had a daughter that the church sacrificed, and that was like what started it. And like I mean, you could go on and on, which is kind of why I like that a lot of it isn't just given to you. Exactly. I'm gonna just quickly bring some of these comments up, and then we're just gonna talk about the end. I agree that the marketing didn't build that up, but I heard a lot of initial quotes from reviewers stating it was the scariest movie ever. Wilkie's movies and music, always happy to have you here. And we kind of agree with that. Your cult boyfriend, thank you so much for joining us. I'll be watching this back tonight after I see it. Kind of sort of excited for it. Was a massive fan of the Black Coat's daughter. You saw that, right? A couple of you?
Yes. Yeah. Phenomenal. Underrated. Underrated. I think that's also why a lot of us came into this movie so excited, because it's like you see Black Coat's daughter and it just blows your mind, and you're like, wow, like this, it's made by the same guy. The same dude made this movie. We're going to get the same thing. They're just kind of, I don't want to say they're polar opposites, but it's a different atmosphere for this one for sure.
I don't know. That scene in front of the furnace.
Yeah. Yeah. If you haven't seen it, go see it.
Max, thanks so much for joining us. He says this movie to me was incredible. Should been hyped as a thriller though. Every shot of the movie is masterful. So yeah, I mean, if it was had been more marketed of like being a thriller and creepy and suspenseful, maybe some of the haters wouldn't be going off like they are right now. um, cool. So I have the least amount of knowledge when it comes to biblical imagery or symbolism, things like that. And the number 14 is clearly the most important number of the film when it comes to what's going on. Do any of you have any idea about why the number 14 was chosen? I read that like I don't know if it's like numerology or if it was like has to do with like when you were born or things like that. If you or your number that's given to you, if it's a karmic number, and that if you have 14 as like your life number, then not necessarily you were born on the 14th, but like your life number, then like you have to constantly adapt and make changes because you are kind of repaying or like having to grow from bad things you did in the past. But that's like literally all that I've found on why that number was chosen. I don't know if any of you guys know, and we can extend this conversation into the overall ending of the movie and what happened in the house.
That is also one of my biggest questions. On that second go, I was kind of hoping I would see something that I didn't see the first time, or I would hear something that I didn't hear the first time. And again, it's one of those things that's thrown out and left out in the open, and it didn't give you a reason why 14 was so significant. The only explanation that we get is that it makes the upside down triangle, and if you turn it the other way, it makes an upright triangle, which is a negative and a positive. That's all that it touches on. So again, it makes branches, but you're not getting a connection to that branch. You don't really know why, as far as I've seen, and I've seen it twice. It's not explained. It's just left open to your own personal interpretation, which is kind of frustrating because you want to know the significance of that and why he picks who he picks and why he picks how he picks. What is the significance of the people born on the 14th that their entire families have to die?
Right.
Like what is the significance of that? Why are you choosing just 14? What is the difference from somebody who's born on the 6th, which is a more, worldwide known number to be associated with Satanism? 14 was just kind of thrown out there. I was hoping to get that answer on the second go, but I still haven't gotten it, and I still haven't connected the dots to that. Maybe if I see it a third time, maybe I'll see something that I didn't see the first 2 times. But I mean, even on all my research that I did after the fact, because it was kind of driving me crazy, I didn't really see anything that really touched on any of that in accordance with Satanism. So for me, it was just one of those things that I wish we got more clarity on, but we unfortunately didn't. I don't know if the other two maybe see it a little differently, but for me, there was no connect.
Yeah, I literally just did a Google search of like the significance of 14, and like you said earlier, it's so many different meanings. One of the things that stood out to me was one is which the number 14 in the Bible is a double measure of spiritual perfection, or symbolize deliverance or salvation. So yeah, I have no idea what the connection of that all could mean, but and again, I haven't studied the Bible since I was like a kid, but I do, so maybe there's something with Revelations or Revelation that ties into the symbolism of 14. But yeah, it's a good question to have, and it could just be one of those things where it's just a number the director. It's his favorite number, or it's his. I don't know what his Oz's birthday is, or maybe they may. I don't know. Maybe it took 14 days to make the script, 14 months to write it. Who knows? I don't know.
Yeah. I wish.
Yes. And if KB, do you have any thoughts about 14?
No, I was doing the same thing.
Okay.
Because I know 13 is like a positive thing, despite people thinking of it as an unlucky number.
Yeah.
That's that life number means like blessings and goodness and all that stuff. So it's kind of ironic that people have a negative connotation about it. But
Yeah.
one off from that, I don't get the significance of it. So it could be anything. That behind the scenes on the physical release is going to be something. I know that much.
Yeah, for sure, for sure.
Well, I want to just finish up here with the end, which was such a huge, I mean, huge reveal, and just so much that I loved. I got to start with, I think Blair Underwood's change in his personality was so great. When he answers that door, he's like cheerful, and then he lets them in and he kind of like rolls his eyes like he despises her. And it's so different than what like we've seen him being like warm and loving towards her and like a mentor the whole film. And the way I interpreted the whole thing was, yes, he's gonna, he winds up murdering the whole family. Even though she tries to stop it, he doesn't murder his daughter, obviously, because she's able to do so, and she kills the mom. But the end, I personally think that maybe she got possessed by that doll, that Harker did. But I did not see that coming, with the gun not having one last round to shoot the doll in the head. And it seems like that they've kind of shown that like once you are in the presence of one of those dolls, it just keeps creeping and creeping and creeping into your subconsciousness until it fully just takes over. It possesses you to a certain extent. What did you, I mean, and I might be completely just off in thinking that she is now possessed, but the way it's almost like an Inception ending where like he spins his token, totem, and you don't know what's real or not. I know everyone has theories on that, but like it's kind of like one of those moments which I love in movies where it doesn't necessarily like piss me off that it's open-ended, because they do give you a lot to kind of discuss. But yeah, that whole ending moment, to the moment she opens the door to the very end of the gun not being able to go off and fully save her in her mind, I think the daughter is probably safe, but I don't know if the evil has taken over Lee Harker at this point. What do you guys think?
I'm unsure. I need to see it again.
Same.
I really do, because I mean, how long was she there? At what point, if it is something like what you're saying, at what point does it take over? Has it taken over from the time she was 9 years old and her life has just been some type of trance-like existence because she's quote unquote safe, because the mother committed? Who knows? I think this is one of those cases where it is left up to interpretation and rewatches and commentaries. And if I don't know now, maybe I'll know in the future. Maybe I'll never know. Maybe, that totem just keeps spinning in our minds.
For me, I don't feel like at that moment in time, I don't feel like she is Harker. I don't feel like she is the one that's possessed in that moment. I feel like that's the first time in the movie where she is actually free. I feel like the whole time, like all of us have said, the whole time she's completely emotionless. She really shows no reaction to anything. I mean, I barely see the girl blink throughout the entire movie. Her eyes are open the whole time. She's very stuck in her own mind. But it's not until she's on the way to the sergeant's house where you actually see her release any kind of emotion, where she starts screaming in the car. That's the first time you see her show anything. And as soon as she gets to the door, you can see the panic and the emotion on her face, because she's just like, this, I finally figured it out. I figured it out, and I need you to come with me. But him at this point, where he's been the most lively one in the movie, minus Longlegs, he is now the one that is emotionless and not showing anything. He says, he even in his seriousness, he still manages to bring a few laughs. Especially in this moment, it was one of my favorite lines of the movie.
Coming back to the kitchen.
He's like, come with me into the kitchen. She goes,
Yeah.
okay, and he grabs the wife and she's like, okay, I'll be back, and he's like, no, you're still gonna be in the kitchen because that she's just about to get gacked. And and Harker's sitting there looking, and she's like trying to like no, like please, like she's showing full emotion. And in that moment, when he comes out after you hear the wife being taken out, she's in a panic, and the mother is there, and she's trying to determine, am I gonna have to take out my mom or am I gonna have to take out this guy? What's gonna happen first? She grabs the gun. Unfortunately, he comes out first to finish everything, and her prerogative was to protect the child, because she knew that child is now looking at this doll, and she is also now not showing any emotion. She's sitting there staring at this doll, unbroken. It's just pure stare. Even when she stands up at one point to put her behind her, the girl slowly creeps right back to it and is staring at this doll that looks just like her. And then in that moment, she kind of puts it all together, and then the mother realizes that she's going to try to break this and gets up to do what she's going to do. And then that's when she kills her mother as well. And in that moment, I feel like it's the first time in the entire movie where I feel like I actually see her breathing, blinking, and taking in like everything that just happened and showing any kind of emotion whatsoever, as to where in the entire movie you got nothing from her. So it's the little girl in my eyes at that point she needs to take and unbreak from this curse or whatever it is that people want to call it, this hypnosis, whatever it is, to make it so that she's not like how she was. But I think Harker at the end became free and was released of whatever it was that had a hold on her this whole movie, which we didn't know what it was at the time and until now. But this is also why I wish that we got connections to other things, because not every horror thriller movie needs to be left to interpretation. Sometimes I just want to see a thriller, a horror movie, and not have to sit there and overanalyze it and overthink of it and say, what if this, what if that? This movie, as much as I loved it, it's a lot of that. Yeah. And at the ending, you're really feeling that, because you're sitting there and staring at the screen and you're like, you're trying to connect the pieces yourself. And with an ending as loaded as this one is, I think you guys can agree with me on that. This ending is loaded. This is where you're getting the supernatural aspect. You're figuring out about the cult-like behavior. You're figuring out that he's the man under the stairs. Like you're putting all these pieces together, but they're just not. It's just over. And so with Harker, I think it's meant to be left to interpretation. That's how I interpreted it, especially on my second round, because while I was sitting there watching, I was watching everything else, I really noticed that she was the one, as soon as she got into the car after what happened at the mother's house and started screaming, that's when it connected to me. Like, she's not under this anymore. That part is over. She's now fully aware and trying to end this. She's not the one under the curse anymore. It's this other family. And then that's why he started killing his family. It was a repetition, but she wasn't a part of that repetition anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah, lot to break down there for sure. Going back to what you were just mentioning with the her emotion in the car, it almost makes me again excited for the second rewatch and third and fourth or what have you. Did Longlegs predict that? Like because he was screaming in the car as well. Like I don't and listen to his dialogue. I know he was saying things that weren't happening quite yet later on. So it just makes me even a darker ending that she's going to have to carry on the tradition or what have you, because who's to say that he had the false prophet being the mom. He might have had other false prophets that again, based on his origins, he could have just been in this part of town, and obviously in the 90s and satanic panic and all that stuff. So it does open itself up for just leaving your mind up for just a darker ending, which I think there's an interview online that I haven't fully listened to, and I'm paraphrasing, but his ending is much more darker than, as far as leading up to interpretation. Like the way he described it is like a much darker for both characters, Ruby and Lee. I'll have to listen to the whole interview, but yeah, I think for me, it is, and again, going back to, I love the ending, but it just, the journey and all the holes, it makes you look at the film as like, is that leaving it up to interpretation, to have the conversation going, to have the debates or agreements or disagreements, or is it bad writing? Is it a plot hole? That's that whole conversation there. But I like how it ended the story. It's just, it leaves you with a lot of questions, which can sometimes be frustrating to say the least. But I will say, going back to just the ending in general, the last scene was phenomenal. But the scene prior to that, when Lee comes out of the trance, and the camera angle, when the camera kind of pans upside down, like kind of her whole world just got flipped upside down, like that whole setup was so good. And it goes back to an earlier conversation that KB brought up with maybe some criticism being out there. It's a slow burn. It takes its time, which I'm totally down with, procedurals, FBI things, and when you actually can get in it and you feel like you earned that ending. And I think this film definitely earned it, even though it had some, like I said, some questions that makes you question if it was just good writing, bad writing, plot holes, or just things that leave the audience continue to talk about it. But an ending that will stick with me for a while, because it is one of those things that has you talking, which is what you want for any film.
Yeah, and just to clarify, I do totally believe she did get out of that trance when the mom shot her doll. I was just worried that when she was in that room so much at the end, because like the mom even gets possessed by it, and I was just kind of like, oh my God, was she in the room too long with this thing before she killed the doll, Ruby's doll, that it kind of took over her, and then she's going to be, kind of leading off where Longlegs left, especially since she was the kind of like a daughter. She was his daughter in a sense, because he didn't really take care of anyone else except for the girl in the insane asylum who he does visit, and then I love a lot of that stuff at the end, and I can't wait to watch it again. Any final thoughts on this as we wrap up here? I want to real quick, Through the Lens saw it today. And he just wanted to bring up, he loved it, but the religious subtext about the Book of Revelation left me shocked, and that's something I'm really unfamiliar with. So, but I know it's mentioned in a lot of crime and horror movies. I love that they corrected it too.
Revelations.
Yes, Revelation, because they always say in movies Book of Revelations, and I love that little wink wink, because Oz probably was like, well, that's not how it's pronounced every time he watches, or that's not what it's called every time he watches a movie, and I was a little big on his end. They want to get that out. But yeah, so what do you, any final thoughts regarding this movie?
I would say I have three. One, I can't wait to watch it again. Even this little panel has been helpful. Two, did you notice when she was going into the mother's house the second time with the other FBI agent who was left in the car, unfortunately, she passes her doll. Her doll is in one of the rooms as she's walking towards the room with the mother. You see her doll among all the other stuff that has been hoarded. It's just like there. It's like a nice little wink.
My God, I did not notice that. That's awesome.
When I saw it, it's just like my head just went cold. And
It's
then
quick.
Three, if you have Letterboxd and you give the film a high rating, like I gave it 5 stars just to see if this happens, Mr. Downstairs leaves a like on your review. So I got a like from Mr. Downstairs.
I did not know that either. I have to check mine, because I gave it I think I gave it 5 stars on Letterboxd, so I got to check that out.
Yeah, see if you got a like from Mr. Downstairs. But that creeped me out too, because I didn't know about it beforehand.
You're like, I didn't know that.
Now he's watching you, KB.
I was like, huh?
You got a new follower. I don't know if you want him following you, but
I don't know if I want that follower. Nah, I'm good. But this has been fun.
My only suggestion for anybody going into this movie, don't don't go looking for things. Don't go trying to dissect it beforehand. Go in knowing as little as possible. Make your own assumption. Really sit there and think about it afterwards. Try to make your own connections. Horror is subjective as hell. This is going to be one of those things that's going to be subjective as hell and up to its own interpretation. Everyone's feelings on it is going to be different. What everybody interprets is going to be different. This is one of those movies that you're either going to superly love or you're going to hate just because of the pace or whatever it may be. Just go and see it. Go and see it at least once. Make your own judgments on it and go off there. Don't go off of anything that anybody else is saying or anybody else's feelings on it. Just go in as blind as possible, watch it, and then make your own assumptions on it. And it's gonna affect you in some way.
Yeah.
Which way that is, I can't say. I can't determine. Everyone's gonna be affected in some way. It's gonna strike some chords. It's gonna ruffle some feathers. It's gonna make goosebumps for others. It's gonna terrify certain people. Other people, maybe not so much. It all just depends on the viewer. But enjoy it nonetheless.
Yeah. I mean, final thoughts for me. I mean, like I said, I just hope Hollywood takes note of this, because whenever we do have these films that do pop, sometimes Hollywood just takes the wrong things from it and they try to copy and paste and doesn't come anywhere near the same type of aesthetic or vibe or just overall quality. So I hope Hollywood just takes note of how to properly market a film, how to build that type of anticipation for a movie, but then also from a creative standpoint, allow your creators to have their full visions be on display. I mean, have Oz with a cinematographer to have, which is so rare nowadays, is like a consistent tone. Like they did such a good job of creating a mood and a tone, scary or not. It's just, I think we can all agree it gets under your skin. It's a very dreadful feeling. And I wouldn't be surprised if someone does like a deep dive, that some of those images that we saw subliminally like gets under your skin and makes you kind of have like this strength. Cause I remember like the first opening scene of like when we see that red and when we cut to like a white, it like kind of threw me back. So from just like I think very early on before I got on the stream, someone had mentioned like the theatrical experience, like obviously economy wise, not everyone can go to the theater every week like we probably all do and see movies in the theaters. But this is one of those films that I do think the theatrical experience does add so much more to just the enjoyment or just understanding or just experiencing the film on the big screen. Because it is it's almost like you're in a trance. Like I said in my review, I felt like the film was shot through the lens of a serial killer, and it was very dreamlike Twin Peaks type of a feeling. So it's one of those films that, again, I hope Hollywood just takes note of allowing a creator to fully let their vision be realized, and market the hell out of a movie and be creative while marketing it, because it can go a long way. So kudos to Neon. Neon and A24 are my two indie darlings. And last point, Nicolas Cage, obviously great actor, great performance, but shout out to Blair Underwood, like you guys mentioned earlier, Alicia Witt, and I have been a Michael Monroe fan since The Guest and It Follows, and she is just obviously we have the Jenna Ortegas of the world, the Mia Goths of the world, and so on and so forth, but she is my scream queen. Like she is such a great actress, and I'm so excited to see her career continue to blossom, because she's just fantastic.
Yeah. Very well put by all of you. I'm so glad I had you guys on. Just two final comments. Longlegs is firmly in the pantheon of ultimate Cage characters. I definitely believe that for sure. I'm curious how many Halloween costumes we're going to see. And I'm going to be horrified.
Walking around. I really don't. That's the last thing I want to see.
It's the voice that someone has to emulate that voice, because that's what makes it even creepier.
And then this will be a nice bookend, because I did bring up that Oz Perkins is my favorite character in Legally Blonde. And thanks so much, everyone. Thanks so much for stopping by. I do have a short, because I did discover the origin of Longlegs that I didn't talk about here, if you want to check that one out. And everyone's descriptions of all their channels will be listed in the description down below. I'm very grateful and happy they all joined me on this discussion. And we'll see you guys all next time.
Watch a movie.